eleksyon, pumipili ang sambayanang Pilipino ng susunod na lider ng bansa, ng taong magtatakda ng plano at polisiya para sa 6 na taon ng ating kinabukasan. Pero ano nga ba ang hinahanap natin sa isang leader? Sa anong mga kwalifikasyon natin titimbangin ang mga kandidatong nanliligaw para sa matamis nating boto?
Dapat ang leader natin matapang, walang uurungan.
Oo nga.
Ang gusto kong kandidato ay yung magaling sumayaw at entertaining.
Gusto ko yung matikas, yung magaling magdala ng sarili.
Sana yung susunod na presidente mayaman na para hindi na mangurakot.
Alam mo bang base sa ating konstitusyon, 5 lang ang kwalifikasyon para sa mga nagnanais tumakbong presidente ng Pilipinas? Una, kailangan natural-born citizen ng Pilipinas. Ikalawa, kailangang rehistradong botante. Ikatlo, marunong bumasa at magsulat. Ika-4, nasa edad na 40 sa araw ng eleksyon. At ika-5, residente ng Pilipinas sa loob ng 10 taon bago ang eleksyon. Simple, hindi ba? Walang itinatakdang kwalifikasyon base sa edukasyon, work experience o kayamanan. Pero simple nga bang tunay ang mga dapat nating hanapin sa susunod na leader ng ating bansa? Ayon kay Commission on Elections spokesperson James Jimenez, marami pa tayong pwede at dapat hanapin.
Very basic o payak ang ating requirements. Ibig pa sabihin nito na yan lang ang kailangan nating hanapin? Siyempre hindi. Yan ang tinatawag nating minimum. Pwede kang maghanap ng mas lampas pa dyan. No? Halimbawa, maghanap ka ng taong merong integridad. Gawin mong necessary ingredient yan. Gawin mong kalakip yan ng pagpili mo kung sino magiging pangulo. Kailangan may integridad, kailangan may kakayanan, kailangan magaling, kailangan matalino, at kailangan nagsasabi ng katotohanan sa bayan. Kasi ang pipiliin natin ay hindi lang basta-bastang tao. Leader natin ang pipiliin natin. Leader natin na bibigyan natin ng napakalaking kapangyarihan. Kapangyarihan over our lives, over our livelihoods, over our country. So, bagaman maliit or payak lamang ang requirements ng konstitusyon, kailangan tayo bilang botante, pag boboto na tayo, kailangan medyo mas mataas naman ang standards natin.
Tunay na marami tayong dapat hanapin na katangian sa susunod na leader ng bayan. Ngayon, higit kailanman, kailangan nating maging mapanuri.
Sa tingin ko bilang botante, kailangan maging mas mapanuri tayo dahil hindi biro ang halalan. Hindi biro ang hinihingi niya sa atin ng mga kandidatong yan. Gusto nila maging leader natin. Gusto nila magkaroon ng kapangyarihan sa ating kabuhayan, sa ating buhay, sa ating bansa. At dahil dyan, kailangan natin maging mapanuri. Kung jowa mo nga lang pinadadaan mo sa butas ng karayom bago mo sagutin, paano pa kaya yung mga elected leaders natin na may tunay na kapangyarihan sa iyo?
Sabi nga ni Director Jimenez, kung kinikilatis nating maigi ang isang potensyal na jowa bago ibigay ang matamis nating oo, mas lalong higit na dapat nating kilatisin ang mga nanliligaw para sa makapangyarihan nating boto.
Hindi pa kami pwedeng bumoto.
Kaya sana pumili kayo ng tama para sa aming kinabukasan.
Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. 1 minute. We'll start.
Good afternoon, Ariel. Nice seeing
Hi,
you.
sir. Nice seeing you again. Ipo-promote lang namin yung PPI advocacy shirt. If you guys want to order, those are watching us right now, live on FB and also in the meeting room, you can just PM us or email PPI or text me if you want. Yun. Ang fund, ang kita po nito ay pupunta po sa PPI Emergency Fund for Journalists po. Ayun. So, non-partisan shirt po ito, ha? Ayan. Yan yung shirt ng advocacy t-shirt ng PPI. It comes in white and also black. Yan. Kaya suot ko siya. Hindi ako naka-formal attire ngayon, Sir Ronald.
Ano yan? Dusa, ginhawa.
Oo, i-check mo lang. Bahala ka na.
Walang others.
Wala. Ano bang nasa likod ko? Hindi, wala. Walang nasa likod. It's just PPI.
All or nothing daw yan, sir.
Ayan na si Joy.
walang iba pa.
Walang
middle ground.
Oo, extreme talaga. Both extremes lang. Oh. Ayun.
Heaven and hell lang.
Ayan, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ariel Sabelin. I'm the Executive Director and Trustee of the Philippine Press Institute. Kami po ay nalulugod. Nandito na naman kayo sa ating pang-apat kasi January, February, March, April, no? 4th month of our monthly roundtable. Among other activities ng PPI na ginagawa every month, ito po yung, one of the most anticipated kasi open to the public siya. So it's a public forum at the same time. So as I said, yung hindi po nakapasok sa ating Zoom meeting room ay na pwede po silang manood sa FB live streaming natin. At kung hindi pa talaga makakapanood, ang link po ng ating program or show ngayon ay mapapanood sa YouTube channel ng Philippine Press Institute. Kami po nagpapasalamat sa ating mga panelists ngayon for joining us. Yung iba po mga suki na, di ba? Papalapit na po yung eleksyon at maraming bagay po ang pinag-uusapan namin sa PPI at ngayon po isang pinakamahalaga or very significant topic po pag-uusapan natin ngayon. It's about surveys. Hindi na malingid sa ating kaalaman na ayun, samot-saring surveys ang lumalabas. Meron pang academics, meron pang institutional, meron pang kalye surveys, di ba yung mga ganun. So pero ang tanong doon kasi is how do we make sense of surveys, di ba? Not only for journalists but for our public consumers as well para mapalalim pa natin ang ating usapin ngayon ay narito po ang ating seminar director na siya po ang nag-coordinate ang nag-imbita on behalf of the Philippine Press Institute ng mga panelists natin ngayong hapon. This monthly roundtable is being supported by Seidel Foundation at sa aming mga programa po na sinusuportahan pa rin ng Seidel Foundation. For more updates and details on these activities, all you have to do is just visit our FB page, Facebook page, and also the page of Seidel Foundation and also website ng PPI. We have the PPI News Commons for pandemic and elections reporting. Ayun po. Maraming salamat Seidel Foundation. And having said that, I'd like to call the resident representative of Seidel Foundation to the Philippines, Attorney Guts Heineke. Is he here? Carol? Hi, Carol from HSF. Carol?
Sub na ako.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. Bilis naman.
Hi, Carol.
Carol, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Carol. Yeah.
Baka remove the headset. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Ano na lang.
Okay.
Ano ba itong headset na to? Props lang yan.
Okay. All right.
He's on travel. So,
sige, okay. On behalf of Attorney Guts Heineke, as I said, the resident representative of Seidel Foundation to the Philippines, here is Caroline Lee. She's one of the project directors of Seidel Foundation for the opening message from HSF. Hi, Carol. Good afternoon to you.
hello, Ariel. Thank you. And thanks to all our experts today. As Ariel mentioned, this is a very hot topic. But first of all, regards from our resident representative, Guts Heineke. He would have loved to join us this afternoon, but he's on travel to another work-related activity. I'm Caroline Lee, program coordinator, one of the program coordinators of the Seidel Foundation. And we have a very timely and relevant topic today. And I'm sure it's a question that's on the minds of so many people. But let me reiterate what Ariel also mentioned earlier, which is very important. This is non-partisan. The Ansada Foundation is a German foundation. It has absolutely no opinion where the elections, in which direction it goes, where that is concerned. And quickly about the Seidel Foundation, we have been working with local partners here in the Philippines for more than 40 years now, building up democracy and good governance. And as for today, this is going to be a very exciting, very informative discussion for sure, because we're anticipating so many questions that are in the minds of so many people to be delved into, to be answered. No? And with that, I wish everybody good afternoon and a dynamic discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, HSF. Ayun, Joyce, excited na tayong lahat. At saka ang ating mga viewers ngayon, hindi lang sa meeting room, pero yung nanonood sa atin sa Facebook. At wag natin patagalin pa. Di ba yung tanong nga natin, Joyce, kahit itanong mo pa sa mga kapitbahay, kaopisina natin, na-survey ka na ba? O sa FB friends natin, di ba? Pero I'm pretty sure naman, there are a lot of people out there na talagang na-survey din naman. Pero di ba nga ang resulta ng isang survey ay dapat malaman din ng publiko. Paano nga ba bibigyan ng buhay ba, Joyce, or ng significance ang isang survey result? Kasi especially ngayon, binanggit ko nga kanina, papalupit yung election at sa sobrang dami ng mga surveys ngayon, ano ba doon ang dapat paniwalaan natin, Joyce, diba? All right, I'd like to call as Summer Director, PPI Summer Director, also the moderator today, Joyce Pañares. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ariel. Good afternoon to all of our viewers today, our participants in the Zoom meeting, in the Zoom room rather. Maliban po sa mga suki natin ng mga tagapakinig, we also have members of the media who are actually covering this event as an FYI. I saw CNN, GMA News, I saw Panay News na nasa loob po. Yeah, JP Soriano is asking if the media is allowed to record. Yes, we will allow.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Here,
JP.
the tech team will allow the media to record as well.
Siguro, Joyce, ito bago pa itong programa. Oo, bagong programa pa natin ito, ang dami na sigurong nagme-message sa iyo at mga tanong, madadagdagan pa yan mamaya.
Because plinag natin to sa social media account ng PPI, maraming mga nag-send na actually ng questions even before pa our roundtable today.
Ayun.
So, ayun. Maraming mga nag-message na actually ngayon pa lang, hindi pa tayo nagsisimula.
Mamaya po, relax lang tayo po. Yung open forum.
Relax muna. Okay, so marami sa atin kahit na nasa media, maaaring hindi rin alam o maintindihan paano po ba ginagawa ang survey, siya ba ay makatotohanang representasyon ng population natin. In fact, we started with the question, na-survey ka na ba? Kasi nag-survey kami sa PPI at halos lahat sa amin, walang nakakakilala sa na-survey niya. So, normal ba yon? Tayo ba ay excluded? O dahil ba yon sa scientificong pagpili ng respondents? Diba? Kaya may hindi nahahagip at may nahahagip sa pagsasurvey. We're very lucky today to have actually 4 gentlemen who will join the discussion. We have Dr. Ronald Holmes, the president of Pulse Asia Research. Hi, sir. We have Dr. David Yap Jr. He's the chief data scientist of Publicus Asia. Si Dr. Guido David, I hope he's already in the, haven't seen, but maybe. Dr. Guido David of Octa is also confirmed his attendance today. And of course, we have Dr. Antonio Gabriel Lavinia, si Dean Tony Lavinia, who will help us, make sense of our discussion. Hi, Sir Tony. Hello. Magandang hapon po. Oo. Sa lahat po na nagtatanong, yes po, pwede pong i-record itong ating roundtable today to all who message sa ating chat box. Actually, marami rin pong nakatutok ngayon sa ating Facebook live stream and even sa YouTube.
Yeah.
Kasi may nagsabi kanina na parang mas clear daw yung live stream sa YouTube
okay.
natin.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so wag nating patagalin pa, no? Let's start with our gentlemen who are with us today. We'll give them first an opportunity to make an opening remarks, and then we'll go straight to the Q&A. Dr. Ronald Holmes, you'd like to start, sir?
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa imbitasyon. Medyo hinihingal at may ubo. Maganda yung title, no? Kung na-survey ka na ba? Ako mismo hindi pa. Pero may kapitbahay ako na survey na sa amin, sa lugar namin sa Bacoor. At nagkataon na yung survey. Ay survey na ginawa namin 3 taon na nakaraan. Maliit ang posibilidad na masasurvey ka kung ang ginagamit ng metodolohiya sa pag-sample ay yung ginagamit namin, which is the multi-stage probabilistic sampling. David is here, correct my probability, but it would be 0.000 maybe 3. Because our sample is 2,400, you have 65.7 million Filipinos. It's a small probability. But we are giving an equal chance for everyone, given the probabilistic sampling, to be selected as a respondent. Medyo mahirap lang makakuha ng respondent kung ikaw ay nakatira sa Forbes Park, hindi katulad ko sa Pobres Park, o ikaw ay nakatira sa condominium sa BGC, at hindi sa amin sa Bacoor Government Center, no? Kasi nga may restrictions in terms of entry. But what we've done over the last 22 years in Pulse Asia was to secure that the survey is representative of the population. The only thing that we use to differentiate, so stratify the population will be male and female. We select our respondents randomly and we subsequently classify them into socioeconomic classes. As I said, we've done this for more than 2 decades in Pulse. I've been doing survey for more than 3 decades. Almost my entire academic life, which is 37 years and going. And it's important for us to note that the type of surveys that we do, which are cross-sectional, are really time-bound. And you always hear this. Time-bound means that it only captures the moment, and that moment will be fleeting and may subsequently change given events that will transpire. It's also important to note that the disposition of our voters, the opinion of the public, will also be affected by information that they obtain by whatever means. And in this current ecology where there's so much disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, we have to take note that those are important things that may explain why people have certain opinions and preferences. I'll end there so that we have more time for discussion. Maraming salamat ulit.
Thank you, Sir Ronnie. I'd like to call Mr. David Yap of Publicus Asia.
Ahoy.
Hi, David.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Philippine Press Institute for inviting Publicus to this forum and providing us with an opportunity to discuss our work in covering the ongoing 2022 election season. I would also like to extend our gratitude to Dr. Holmes of Pulse Asia and Dr. David of Octa Research for their stellar work in strengthening and expanding the Philippine polling industry. As a statistician, I am deeply grateful to Pulse and Octa for providing us with the data points necessary to conduct different types of statistical analysis. As an aside, Dr. Ronnie, parang pag-election lang talaga tayo nagkikita, no? As some of you are aware, we at Publicus have been tracking voter preferences since October of last year. We are presently conducting the latest edition of our Pahayag National Election Tracker series, the results of which will be released sometime next week. This will be the penultimate edition of our ongoing series of national non-commissioned election surveys, which form part of our CSR portfolio, as well as our efforts to enrich discussions about Philippine politics. We at Publicus take heart in the reception of our surveys by the general public, particularly because it strongly implies a keen interest in or a demand for empirical evidence. As a student of statistics, I take pleasure in seeing people developing and cultivating an interest in polling data. We at Publicus are also gladdened by the recent developments in the Philippine polling industry, particularly the noticeable increase in reputable and reliable survey firms. Publicus is firmly among those who welcome the emergence of other reputable survey firms because ours is an industry that will benefit immensely from spillover effects. As I mentioned earlier, the increase in data points alone opens opportunities for deeper analysis as well as improvements in both precision and accuracy. Moreover, an increase in the number of reputable survey firms would make it more difficult for bad faith actors and fly-by-night survey operations to mislead the public. Before I conclude my opening statement, I would like to impress upon everyone in attendance that Publicus is wholly committed to the strictest standards of our discipline. You can rest assured that we will carry out our work with integrity, transparency, and honesty. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker would be Dr. Guido David, David of Octa Research. Hi, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, Joyce. And thank you for the invitation. And I'd like to say hello also to my fellow Roundtable participants, Ronnie and David. So again, thank you. And we welcome definitely the opportunity for us to be discussing, topics related to surveys, particularly as, the campaign is, just less than 3 weeks. The elections are just 3 weeks away. And there's definitely some heated, I would say heated discussions going on regarding surveys because definitely we have to acknowledge that surveys play a significant role, not just for the end users, but also for the public and for the media. And that's why definitely we welcome this discussion so that we can be more transparent about what we do and what people can expect from the survey firms. We all know that we are relatively a younger, newer survey outfit as compared to some of the more legendary survey firms like Pulse Asia and SWS, who have been around for quite some time. And what we notice is that aside from survey firms, there are also some other survey results that keep coming out periodically, and these are basically part of what is out there. And what's also important for us, all of us in the news and in the media, in the private sectors, how to sort of distinguish between legitimate surveys and surveys that may be, what they might call Kalia surveys, or surveys that are done non-scientifically. And this will help us basically flesh out, what is a more credible source of information versus something that is possibly of dubious source. So again, thank you for the invitation, and we definitely welcome the discussion forthcoming. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And last but not the least, si Dean Tony Lavinia. Hi, sir.
Hi, Joyce. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the PPI for inviting me to this forum. I'm actually the only consumer of the surveys here. I'm a consumer as a political analyst. I actually give an average of 1 to 2 election briefings every day for like a month now, to corporate boards, to student audiences, to bishops, to academic audiences, and significant part of the briefings I give is trying to interpret the latest survey results from all the gentlemen, the groups that the gentlemen here represent. But it's just one data point. I also look at the rallies, I look at the platforms, I look at other parts, because surveys is just one part of the campaign to understand the campaign that's going on. But I just to be sure, I appreciate the work that these firms are doing. I was in the SWS board for almost a decade, to 2 election cycles, the actually from 27 elections to 2016 elections. And I'm actually also a legal advisor to Okta research. But in both cases, I don't do operations. But as a lawyer, I always try to study their methodologies to be sure that if there are legal issues later on, we can defend them. And at least the ones that I know personally, I would be able to defend them both academically and legally as well. So I look forward to the questions and to this discussion.
Thank you, Dean Tony. Simulan na natin kaagad, after those introductory remarks. Let's start with the siguro basic questions na gustong itanong ng mga kababayan natin, kaya lang wala naman silang access sa gumagawa ng survey. And any of the three gentlemen from Pulse or Okta or Publicos can answer. Let's start with this. Bayad ba ang survey? Pag kayo ba gumawa ng survey, meron bang nagpapagawa sa inyo? Ano ang difference ng commission sa non-commission? Huwag po kayong mahiya. Anyone can just...
I'll be the first one to answer. Basically, yung survey, dalawa yan, yung sinasabing commission, non-commission. Yung nire-release namin sa public is a non-commission survey. This is our own survey. Ibig sabihin, sarili namin pera ang ginagastos. Kahit na walang subscriber, itatakbo yung survey. At normally, ginagawa namin to 4 na beses sa isang taon, yung quarterly. Pag malapit-lapit na election, every month from January until April or the month before the election. So yan yung non-commission surveys. Pag commission survey, ibig sabihin merong ibang nagpondo. Pero yung mismong structure ng survey, yung sampling, yung questionnaire, exclusively kami nagdedesisyon kung ano ang dapat na katanungan. Kasi ito yung mahalaga para sa amin. Alam to ni Tony, alam to ni David, at kung ikaw ay academic, alam rin natin to. Basically, yung survey, ang pinagkaiba lang niya, yung pinagkagalingan ng pondo. All research require funds. Some of the research that we do, surveys that we do that are from our own funds are non-commissioned. Some research that we do, some surveys we do are commissioned or funded by other entities. But the source of funding does not in any way affect the integrity of the survey. Maybe that's one thing that I should stress. Kung ano lumabas na resulta, kasi hoda kung ito'y maganda o masama, para doon sa nagpondo, hindi dapat baguhin ang resulta ng isang commission survey.
So sir, kung merong nagpa-commission, wala ba silang say kung paano i-frame yung questions?
Well, meron silang say insofar as ano yung objective ng survey, pero yung pag-frame ng question rests largely with the academic team of Pulse Asia, at least in our case. If we do not agree on the frame of the questions, we just return whatever is the funding.
Is that the same for Okta and Publicos? So you accept
yes,
their money, pero kayo yung mag-frame ng...
Yes po ma'am, and just to add to what Dr. Holmes indicated, I think it's very important for survey firms to stand their ground whenever they have funders. Kasi po, when it comes to formulating questions like what you asked kanina, there are a great many perils involved in questionnaire construction. When you look at a questionnaire, like a single question, you can have a loaded question, you can have a double-barreled question, you can have all sorts of these leading questions that we as statisticians would like to avoid. We avoid those kinds of things. So just like sila Sir Ronnie po sa Pulse Asia, kami po sa Publicos, while we do commission surveys, and while they may have a say, as you said, doon sa gusto po nilang objectives for the survey, kung anong information ang gusto nilang makalap sa mga tao, at the end of the day, we will stand our ground and say that this is how the question should be phrased. And if the survey is going to be conducted through interviews, we also take great care in ensuring that our field personnel are trained in such a way that they avoid the pitfalls of conducting interviews. Kasi po, hindi naman basta-basta itatanong nyo lang yung mga nakasulat sa questionnaire. Everything from the appearance of the interviewer to their tone of voice, to how they say the questions, yung intonation nila, to how they respond to the interviewees. All of those are factors that have to be considered. So I would just like to mention that point, because even that seemingly trivial aspect is something that we are very watchful of.
Sir Guido, may siguro so clear tayo. You accept the funds pero independent yung paggawa ng survey design. Hindi sila ang pwedeng mangialam doon. Tama po.
Just
All
to clarify
gentlemen
po, those are
agreed.
for commission surveys po.
Yes, for the commission surveys. No, I only ask that because sa akin kasi parang napaka-importante yung framing ng question. There was this one survey before, government survey pa nga yata to, labor force survey. Tapos parang napakababa ng unemployment. Pero pag tinignan mo pala yung question niya, parang if you've been employed for at least 1 day in a month, you're automatically considered employed. Kaya naman, parang from the very question itself, parang hindi mo na mapaniwalaan yung resulta ng survey.
Parang Joyce, meron kasi mga nagko-commission dati sa amin, for example, that we rejected. Ang mga tanong nila, gusto nila, parang push question. I'll give an example of a push question that happened in the United States, yung weapons of mass destruction, yung Iraq War. May isang survey organization that asked a question, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Do you agree with the invasion of Iraq by the United States? Parang sinabi mo muna, Iraq ano yan satanas.
Agree ka na sa first statement.
So may condition, nag-condition ka ng response. What you're doing here is not eliciting an opinion. What you're doing here is pushing an image of Iraq. So pag sinabi mong, for example, may isang lumapit sa'yo, sinabing ganun, gusto kong malaman kung ang matao, kilala nilang corrupt yung kalaban ko. Tapos etong tao na ito magsasabi, pwede mo ba itanong to? Si Juan de la Cruz ay malakas mangurakot. Iboboto mo ba siya? Iba na yan. Ang pinapalabas mo dyan, nangungurakot siya. Hindi mahalaga doon sa tao na yun na malaman niya kung iboboto si Juan de la Cruz. Mahalaga, itanim sa isipan ng mga constituent, maaaring botante, na nangungurakot si Juan de la Cruz. Definitely, that's that's taboo. The reason why we say we should phrase the design and the questions, decide on the design, because at any time, that survey that is commissioned can be released to the public.
Yes.
And we're academics. We're answerable to our community, the academic community. So if we phrase a question that's leading, then we would be held accountable for that question. And we're safeguarding, basically we have to conform to the social science norms. And as academics, we're all academics in Pulse, we are very clear about this particular value that we need to adhere to.
Yeah. Sir Guido, pagdating po sa respondent size or sa number of respondents ng survey, ano po ba yung makatotohanan? Kasi may mga surveys akong nakita na kiniklaim nila 10,000 face-to-face. Makatotohanan pa ba yun? At kung halimbawang 1,200 or 2,000 yung respondents, representative po ba yan ng population ng Pilipinas?
Yes, and Joyce, that's a good question kasi a lot of people ask that. And some people find it hard to believe that you can estimate the sentiment of the entire country based on a few thousand respondents. Kaya sabihin natin even 10,000 respondents, which would be a very, very good sample size. Some may still view it as small relative to the 60 million plus registered voters. Pero that's a matter of statistics. I mean, and based on statistical design, if it's properly framed or properly designed, yung survey natin, then it will be representative because of the design. So what I'm saying is, I can conduct a survey of 1,000 people. For example, I can interview my students in UP and my co-professors, but that will not be representative of the sentiment of the entire country because I'm choosing a very skewed design. I'm choosing people who are from a certain demographic, and most likely they might vote a certain way. Pero if our sample is random and it has sufficient distributive characteristics, then we can make the inference that this could represent the sample or the sentiments of the voting public. Now, of course, may tinatawag tayong margin of error, and that depends on the sample size. So how much is sufficient? It depends actually on how little you want the margin of error is. If you have 10,000 respondents, your margin of error is already less than 1%. As long as it's done properly in a statistical manner, yes. And about 2,400, it has a decent 2% margin of error. And in fact, in a previous webinar with Dr. Holmes, na mentioned that there's a law of diminishing returns aspect to this. Na even as you increase your sample size, yung margin of error will not decrease as fast as your sample size is increasing. Kumaga, once you reach 10,000 respondents, nasa less than 1% na yung margin of error mo. But if you increase it to 100,000, it's still less than 1%. So, and one of the limitations of our surveys is because it's face-to-face, it costs money. I mean, if you have, an online survey, for example, it's probably not going to cost you money. It's a Twitter survey. You can ask, maybe you can get 100,000 respondents, but it's not going to be properly sampled. So yun yung difference between a face-to-face and properly sampled statistical design versus, a survey which is like a Twitter or a Facebook survey na hindi properly sampled.
So yun po bang mga kalya survey, emoji survey sa Twitter or sa Facebook, parang mahirap paniwalaan o hindi talaga siya representative ng sentimiento ng mga tao? Ganun po ba yun?
Joyce, I would just like to, to answer that question, I would refer to both the responses of Dr. Holmes and Dr. David. To be more technical about it, all of this is contingent on the randomness of the sample. And the randomness of the selection of the sample is what essentially allows survey firms to invoke the central limit theorem. Now, this theorem is critical to sampling because it allows us to assume certain distributional properties of the sample, which can then be extended to the greater population. So this is what allows, for example, Okta and Pulse and Publicus to indicate the margin of error. All of these are based on the normality assumption implicit in the central limit theorem. So while I understand that is technical, I think the key takeaway here is that the crux of the matter is the randomness implicit in the sampling design. So going back to your question, if the survey collected respondents in a non-random manner, then all of these theorems, all of these assumptions will not hold. So that is where the skew, that is where the biases of the respondents, wherever they were collected, will come into play. And all of these are what we try to minimize through the randomness of the sampling procedure.
Error. Well, maybe not in a race where malaki yung gap between the 1 and 2 and 3. Pero sa senatorial race, for example, patayan yan pagdating sa margin of error. Because kung hanggang 12 ka lang, umaabot minsan hanggang sa 13, 14, yung posible pang pumasok dun sa Magic 12. Kaya importanteng alam natin. So kayo mga sinasabi nila na halimbawa na the clear winner, pero yung pala sa margin of error, statistically tied pa rin naman pala siya dun sa number 2. Lalo sa mga local election siguro, napaka-importante nung margin of error natin. Pag po ba mga ganitong panahon ng eleksyon, ang tanong ni Ride, sinong nagko-commission ng mga surveys ninyo? Usually ba private entities or puro politiko rin halos who'd want to know where they stand?
Both private and public entities.
Yeah, similarly, for example, subscribers would be a full range of both political and non-political individuals or organizations. So malawak siya. And then some commission surveys are local. So hindi necessarily national.
Pag ganun ba sir, pwedeng parang carry on question? So you will conduct a national survey and then kung may mga clients would want a local, hindi pwede. Maiiba ang resulta
Iba
pag
po ang
ganun.
design na po nun, ma'am. Those are essentially two separate surveys.
Yeah, tama si David.
Okay.
Hindi mo pwede isakay yung local sa national kasi sisirain mo yung surveys pareho. So you deploy a different team if it happens to be simultaneous, you deploy a different team for your national and your local. You don't do it at the same time. There are some national surveys that we've done which are non-political where we add boosters at the local level, but that's really the national survey. Hindi siya, you should not do it at parang sinasakay mo yung local sa national. That's bad. That's going to distort the survey result.
Ano po kasi ma'am, you're looking at two different target populations. If you are crafting a national survey, then you are interested in insights on the national level or say sub-national level where you're looking at regional groups. But if you're looking at a local candidate, let's say you're interested in the governorship race of a particular province, ibang usapan po yun. Iba po yung targeting when it comes to your sampling design. So, mixing the two is a very bad idea.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll add also, Joyce, pag national survey kasi randomly sineselect mo yung cities and municipalities. So may possibility na although meron kang nagko-commission, let's say sa isang lungsod, na hindi mo napili yung lungsod na yon. So hindi mo gagalawin.
So mai-skew yung national kung ipipwersa mo yung local.
Hindi mo, kaya nga randomness random at every point. You select cities, municipalities randomly. You do not replace it because you have a commission survey. That again takes away the random nature.
The randomness of it. The beauty of surveys is in its randomness.
Yeah.
Dean Tony, bilang nag-iisang consumer ng survey sa ating panelists ngayon, ano po masasabi niyo dun sa proposals ng ibang candidates to regulate survey firms? Actually, one presidential candidate even used the term polluted to describe the results ng survey firms. Kayo po ba, ano pong tingin ninyo sa mga recent survey results that you have encountered?
Well, yung una yung sa tanong na regulation, may basic naman yan na regulation for any industry, so on that. But in terms of suppressing, not allowing them to publish, settled na yan ng Supreme Court, and I agree with that. Basic naman na academic freedom yun, di ba? Basic din na right to information ng mga tao. Just imagine a situation where people who commission surveys, campaigns, people with money do it, and then nobody else sila lang mabibigyan ng information, di ba? Everything will be subjected to speculation. So I'd rather have this situation where itong mga survey firms natin, they have non-commissioned surveys that they publish, and when they have commissioned, subject to the rules that they have, it's also published. But at least ma-critique natin siya. I mean, malinaw din naman, I think, through the years na people actually say na they're not affected by the surveys in whom they decide to vote for, di ba? Anecdotally,
pero sir, on the other side of the spectrum, may claims naman na mind conditioning ang survey. So parang pag alam mong mataas na, iniisip mo, ay sayang yung boto ko kung doon ako sa baka
But
hindi manalo.
experience with people is hindi naman ganyan ang isip nila. Ang impact ng survey though, ng survey results, di ba? The nearer it is to the elections, it does shape the decisions of politicians, di ba? Local politicians. Yun talaga ang pinaka-importante. Kaya in some jurisdictions, parang pinoprohibit siya like 3 days or 5 days before. May limit siya na pinoprohibit para parang hindi ma-influence yung mga local machineries in making the decision. Sa atin kasi, my experience in real life campaigns is that the decision makers decide at the beginning, then they evaluate at the middle, and then they can still change their mind after the last survey results come out, diba?
Yeah.
So talagang that's the reality that people are that they do when decisions have to be made, diba? And if they're smart, they're also not just watching the surveys; they're watching other things. I will watch of course now you watch social media. You also watch the rallies. I mean. And how much you can bring people to the street. So those are all the things that you watch out for. You make sure that you know the history, the track record of the survey firms that are providing the results, diba? Their methodology to be able to make that decision. And recalling again what Ron said, importante yung time bound, diba? Importante yung time bound. So kung surveys natin, usually the last survey is 3 days or 5 days before. 3 days or 5 days before yun, meron ka pang 3-4 days, diba? And if you can figure out other things that can change the situation, especially in a volatile situation, dati kasi mas mahirap kasi di ba mabagal ang news. Today, news can travel, including fake news, in 30 minutes, diba? In 30 minutes. Right now, may very volatile situation tayo globally. Diba? What if mag-nuclear war sa Russia and Europe? That will affect also our elections or maybe not. Diba? Ang point ko lang is that these events can happen from the last survey to the time you actually vote. Diba? That's why people should never give up on their candidates. Diba? All the way to the end. Tayo may very volatile situation tayo. The disqualification of Marcos. And I'll be very honest. The COMELEC has done us a very big disservice. Lumabas yung final decision now, but that's not yet the COMELEC decision. The COMELEC decision will come out when? Sabi nila last week of April. Pwedeng first week of May. May Supreme Court case kaagad yan. Diba? That will be the news. From May 4 to 7, I can predict that the news will be the petitioners against the Marcos disqualification went to the Supreme Court to file to contest the decision of the COMELEC, assuming the COMELEC clears Marcos, diba? The survey people probably hindi na makakapture yan, Ron, no, sa last survey, no? If the case is filed on the 7th, no, or the 6th, Friday, yan ang pre-election, that's the last day they can file the case. May 6 kasi hindi yan makakapture ng any of the survey. But that weekend, people will have to assess, di ba? Will Duterte actually try to have Marcos disqualified by the Supreme Court? All of that. So ang daming, that's why sinasabi ko palagi, the surveys are very important. I attest that. I've seen that. But there are many circumstances that can change, even for the senatorial race. And we've seen that. Ang problema ko lang sa ngayon, and let me just say this point, is parang wala tayong, ganda ng 2016 kasi Pulse Asia, the weekly survey, di ba? So natatrack na yung ABS-CBN na commission. Tama ba yun, Ron? Na natatrack natin sila all the time, di ba? And ang trajectory ng both presidential, vice presidential race, that was really, really nice. Parang wala tayong ganong classes. So we'll have to rely on the different survey firms, sa timing nila, when it will happen, di ba? But with this volatile situation, I actually think that the surveys may not be as critical or the most critical at this point because these big events, explosive events, di ba? I use nuclear war, but I just saying there are nuclear things in a campaign that can happen in the last week of the campaign. And so we just have to be careful. And everyone that's in the campaigns, focus lang kayo sa kailangan yung gawin, di ba? Focus lang kayo sa kailangan yung gawin. Huwag kayong ma-disappoint sa mga survey results, di ba? Because this is such a volatile time.
Yes, David.
I would like to point out that reputable survey firms are not media entities or influencers. We are engaged in polling, not mind conditioning. We neither compel nor force people to believe our results. The firms represented here today provide the general public with all the information necessary for them to make their own assessments and more or less leave it at that. Interpretations of other people of the content that we release are beyond our control. More to the point, the numbers that reputable survey firms release are precisely that. They're numbers. If you're looking for the entities engaged in mind conditioning, then turn your attention towards those people engaged in cherry picking the bits and pieces of information that they agree with, and then extrapolating these into grand encompassing narratives. I would also like to add that I cannot help but take umbrage at the allegations made by some individuals that survey firms are engaged in mind conditioning merely for releasing results that they find disagreeable. I'm confident that I can speak not just for Publicus, but also for Pulse Asia and Octa Research when I say that we take our work and commitment to statistics gravely. Perhaps most importantly, it is against our interest to falsify our reports, given that our continued survival as a firm is contingent on our reputation.
Sort of quick follow-up lang. Nung after that Easter press con sa Manila Pen, they were raising issues, of course, about the survey results. And then yung isang binanggit nila is that iisa lang daw yung firm na bumababa at nagsasurvey. So parang ang ini-imply nila or ang accusation nila is that ang population ng nasa-survey pare-parehas lang regardless kung sino ang gumawa. It's either Pulse or SWS or Octa or Publicus. May katotohanan po ba yun?
Fake news.
That's kind of funny because we have multiple teams operating on different surveys. So it can't just be one team.
It's fake news. It's disinformation.
So hindi totoo yun. Hindi iba-ibang teams.
Ang sinasabi ata doon, parang pareha yung field people. Alam ko din, hindi yung totoo, di ba? People control different field. Even if the agency might be the same, but because it's a different client, they might have different teams as well.
It's basically disinformation siya. There was a time I was tempted to ask some of these politicians to observe or have a staff observe our surveys. But then I said that might ruin the integrity of our survey.
Yeah. Sir, gentlemen, bibilisan ko yung questions kasi medyo dumadami sila. Madaming interesado sa ating topic today. Una muna kay JP Soriano from GMA News. Gaano naging ka-accurate ang surveys ng 2016 national presidential and vice presidential elections sa actual turnout? Or maybe to add to that, historically, tumatama ba talaga yung survey results sa resulta ng eleksyon?
Kung ang question ay turnout, mahirap. Yung turnout is voting turnout, no? Iba yung result. Kasi voting turnout
result pala, sir. Sorry.
Kung result, sinabi ni Dr. Lavinia na we did weekly surveys then. Nung March, nakahabol na si Digong. Nung April, lumamang na siya. That's the advantage of doing weekly surveys. But then, at that time, we had ABS-CBN commissioning those surveys. ABS-CBN has been shut down. So, in 2016, our last survey closest to the election showed that Lenny Robredo will win by about 2 percentage points. And that Digong Duterte will win by more than 10 percentage points. That's the survey closest to the elections. So tama siya. The only difference I think I've seen in our surveys would be the percentage share of each candidate. Kasi mahirap. Yung exit poll noong 2010, ganun din. Tama rin siya. Noong 2004, we also had a survey where there was a slight lead of GMA over FPJ. So in the last 3 presidential elections that we've done surveys, the survey closest to the election came close to the actual results.
So, klaro po yun, ano? For, at least for polls, for the last 3 presidential elections, tumatama yung resulta sa actual din na resulta nung elections.
Which doesn't mean, Joyce, that, kasi pag mas pinakamalapit di ba? Maganda yung exit poll. Yung exit poll talagang should be more predictive. Right? After the exit poll is predictive. The survey is farther away from the election. If you're talking about a 3-week period, that's 3 weeks. Many things can happen in 3 weeks.
Madaming pwedeng mangyari. Yes.
Sir,
go ahead, Sir Dean.
Kahit in 1 week, marami pang mangyari. Kaya importante kailan yung last survey. I remember Ron, diba yung Grace po, di ba, sa Senate race, di ba, yung within 1 week, nag-shift siya from 8 or 7 to 1, di ba? Ang analysis doon, just because of one TV ad with Susan Roses, di ba? Si Cayetano in 2007 with Trillanes in that last week. Pero nakaka-capture yun na surveys, nakaka-capture na surveys yung pag-momentum. Pero yung actual end result, kung maaga ka mag-end ng survey mo, hindi mo talaga siya makaka-capture. I think even GMA, di ba kaya nagka-problema yun? Kasi I think GMA relied on the surveys na magla-landslide siya o sure winner siya. And then sa actual voting, hindi pala. And that's why he has to call Comelec, has to call Nagalo Garcia at lahat. Kasi di ba? So Binay and Rojas, I mean, parang the surveys seem to say na Rojas, pero nagka-catch up talaga si Binay on that last week, di ba? But on the election day itself, parang hapon pa lang, sabi ko mukhang Binay na ito, no? Kasi parang you can see that kind of movement in if you've been a political analyst for a long time na but so the numbers are also if the fight is close, diba? Then the numbers can also even if eventually they're accurate, but they're not as predictive as they would if it was a landslide.
Yeah. Sir, matanong ko lang po, for Okta, for Publicus, and for Pulse, kailan yung huling survey na i-release ninyo?
I'm not sure if I can divulge because we may or may not release our last survey, but our next survey will be released next week and we are going to be surveying up until the week prior to the election.
Prior to the elections. For Okta, Sir David?
Yeah, we're in the process of conducting a survey. So again, I like Dr. Yap, I'm not sure if I can divulge if it's going to be released. I think it's most likely going to be released. So yeah.
Sir Ronnie, sa Pulse po?
We have an April survey. We hope to release it by the end of the month or early April. So that's our regular. As I said, we do monthly surveys closer to the election. And the last survey.
The last monthly survey.
This is the last monthly survey.
Or may hahabol pa po? Within the first week of May.
There were occasions in the past that we did a survey closer to the election, but we didn't have the time to release it before the election.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't know whether we'll still do the same. It's a Herculean effort.
Dito hihirit ako ng suggestion sa mga firms, diba? And believing in all their good faith, etc. Baka maganda na na parang voluntary, like a week before, parang, diba, all the information is yan, all the and parang, kasi so many things can happen in that particular. Baka maganda na may voluntary, very clear sa akin na for public interest na parang na let the political process unfold and baka lang maganda. I haven't thought about that as much as I should, but
what are you requesting, Dr. Levine?
A week, parang 1 week voluntary voluntary non-release if ever man of like the week before the elections, diba? So that
don't release your survey results in the election week.
Well, probably by Friday or Thursday, diba? Pero you allow the weekend to be more about deliberation of the strengths of the candidates, the issues that are at hand, diba? Especially if something like the Supreme Court case comes up during that last week, things like that deliberated. But that's voluntary.
Lavinia, I was under the, well, I may be called a free speech absolutist, but I'm under the impression that more information would be better than less. I would think, as you yourself indicated earlier, that surveys provide people with information. So I would, my impression as of this moment is that it would be better.
I'm just asking for voluntary, for public interest, nothing more. And sometimes, I mean, free speech is very important, but free speech is also, you need people to discuss the issues and not the numbers at some point.
I think that there is adequate space to discuss both the issues as well as survey results, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I am partial. I'm partial to numbers.
Yeah, I understand where Tony's coming from, but I also agree with David because, it's the right to information. And, survey information from us or Okta or Publicus are not the only information that people get. You have information now. There's a question now, for example, with regard to Google Trends, which is being peddled
yun sana ang
as more
tatanong ko,
representative.
sir.
It's not representative because Google Trends, the ones who do searches, do it on their own volitionally. There's a self-selection bias that's built in. We have to study how it can forecast. I have not done that. I've got so much work. But that's one information that's being peddled alongside survey data. And survey data, you have different types of survey organizations, right? You have online surveys. All of this information are being disseminated to the public. If you ask us to voluntarily withhold information, then the only information that would remain are those information that are not in any way going to decide, that are really beyond our control, that would be peddled. And some of those, Tony, I'm afraid, would be really non-representative or even contrived. That's why I think that's where the decision of the Supreme Court was in the past. This is the people's right to information. And of course, we have to do something about people discerning. I understand where Tony's coming from, but it would be hard if we restrict ourselves. And we have never restricted ourselves, despite the fact that we don't agree with our own survey results. And we've been bashed for those survey results. We have never restricted the release of our own survey results, regardless of whether we don't agree or whether we agree with those survey results.
Just to add on the question on Google Trends, the fundamental problem with me, I think, with that assertion is that Google does not ask you about preference. It only registers interest. If I, for example, go into Google right now interested in Vladimir Putin, does that in any way express my support for Vladimir Putin? The idea there is that if you search, if you string together keywords, if you put together keywords, it's a string, right? That the intent behind the search is unknown. That's the problem. You can search for the same string with different intentions. So Google does not ask you about preferences. It's about search.
Ang claim yata nila is parang in the US, naging predictive yung Google Trends.
That's called, I would go ahead and say that's an example of the base rate fallacies. What are the other events that Google Trends have not predicted? Why are you cherry picking a particular result? If you want a fancier term for it, Texas sharpshooter problem. Shoot at the side of the barn and paint a bullseye around what you have shot. Now, if you're asking about mind conditioning, isn't that mind conditioning?
Sir, dito meron lang pong question. Go ahead, sir.
No, and I would also add, because I've been trying to go through that data, and every time I type what's the primary search word, the top search word in the Philippines, it's not political. It's about the NBA. 25,000 searches. If you scroll down the search words, yung political is about 2,000. No? And David is correct. It's a search of the person's name or a political event, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's an indication of one's preference.
Okay.
Joyce, I'd like to add. Because, I've been over the past weeks. I have actually been looking at Google Trends, and but aside from that, I mean, I have also discussed this with Mr. Wilson Chua, who's a data analyst in Singapore. apart from Google Trends, they also look at what's called sentiment analysis. So just briefly, what I want to say is what David and Ronnie said are correct. Now, the Google Trends itself, and even Google disclaims that it's not used as a substitute for polling, because they're not asking who you will vote for. And this is aside from other factors that anybody can go on Google. You don't have to be a registered voter. You don't have to be a Filipino. So there are, and it's not necessarily weighted towards a positive sentiment. And that's where that's why some people are also looking at sentiment analysis, because in sentiment analysis, you can differentiate engagement, which is just, searching for a certain topic, versus whether that's a positive engagement or not. And positive and negative engagements would constitute what we call the sentiment analysis. And that's when you check if a person is being searched favorably as opposed to just being searched. But that being said, there's still going to be a lot of work to be done before we can anoint these methods as possibly substitutes, or that we can't we can't even claim that as of now. And David's correct that if it has a reputation of correctly predicting something, it does not necessarily mean that it's a proper method that is predictive. Pwedeng chumamba lang siya, kumbaga, that's basically what David is saying, na chumamba lang siya sa instance na yun, but then maybe it's not predictive for other applications. But of course, since I'm a data analyst, I look at all sources of data. I don't disregard any source of data. In fact, I even look at 7-Eleven cups sold. And but the interesting part about the 7-Eleven cups sold, it's a bit more correlated with the survey results. So of course, you can say that it's not representative, it's not, it's not scientific. And yes, even 7-Eleven disclaims that it's not scientific. I'm just saying that, one way you can approach this is you can look at different sources of data, and then you can assimilate that and try to make an estimate of what we think would happen. But so far, the most reliable predictor, I would say, would be the face-to-face surveys. We're not saying it's 100% predictor. Some surveys have been incorrect in predicting results, especially if it's close. But what I'm saying is right now, it's the best tool that we have in estimating the voter preference.
Joyce,
so go ahead, sir.
Putting my campaign operative hat, but I decided not to be partisan in this cycle. But the trajectory of a campaign, this is an operative mind, is first you dominate social media, internet, etc. That should overflow into organizing rallies, house-to-house campaigns, etc. That should overflow then into results in the surveys, right? Which ultimately should be confirmed on election day, because the election day is the only survey that counts, as all these gentlemen would also say. So that's the trajectory that you have if you were a campaign operative. The media, social media, traditional media, ad war, etc., resulting in people actually going out to rallies, etc. And then, of course, but that should be reflected. We see that perfectly in the Duterte campaign in 2016, yung ganung klaseng domination of social media, or at least a lot of presence, organizing organically into rallies, and then finally in April or even late March, catching up already in the surveys, and finally election day. So ganon, theoretically, ganon yung connection ng lahat ng yun, di ba? And I don't know if that's gonna happen this time around. I'm sorry I have to go to another actually
Dean, we understand. Oo.
professional lecture that I have to react to. Thank you. Salamat.
Thank
Good
you,
luck,
Dean,
everyone.
sa pag-join po sa amin. Oo.
Just to say,
We
I
will
believe
excuse
in the
Dean
work of
Tony
survey,
Lavinia first.
and I don't believe in false news, fake news about surveys. Thank you.
Thanks, Sir Tony.
Thanks,
Thank you,
you.
Sir Tony. Actually, gusto ko na mag-react kanina dun sa kasi nabanggit yung 7-Eleven. Pero it may not be as scientific as your survey, but that's, putting your money where your mouth is. They literally pay for those cops to show their support for their kandidato.
Yeah, that's getting you way closer into diabetes.
Oo nga, sir. Tama. May question lang po dito. Quickly lang po. How do you, as survey designers, how do you ensure that you have, what safeguards do you have in place so that one, you do not allow yourself to be exploited by people with vested interests? Two, ensure that the survey team is skilled and screened for biases, and that the survey reports provide easily comprehended findings for public consumption.
Well, I can start. For that, I would like to share that we have a series of algorithms that we use in order to flag inconsistent answers. I'm sure that sila Doc Ronnie and Doc Guido are aware of this. Yung anong tawag ito, yung consistency checks. We employ consistency checks, and yung mga on the ground personnel, they're highly trained and they are aware of these consistency checks, and that's sort of an ecosystem wherein which they would not want to act as bad faith actors.
Yep.
Sir
Yeah,
Ronnie, you'd like to add to that?
So we do have those checks. You have spot checks of unsupervised interviews. You have about a third of all interviews that are actually checked. You have consistency checks of completed interviews at the end of the day. And then even after we completed the field work already, when we encoded the data, there are some data that requires verification. The interviewers can go back to the one interviewed to verify the response. If we find that there are inconsistencies in terms of the survey, we repeat that, or we follow the protocol in terms of substituting the respondent. So that's one thing. And that's the reason why we use skilled research interviewers. We do training before we conduct the field work. This is part of it, regardless of whether we're using the same questions. And then for the survey analysis, we just send this to media and we allow media to contact us. My mobile number is open to media. And if you look at it, there's just one point that I'd like to raise. Our survey, our media releases are bland. I mean to say, we don't call an increase a surge. We call it statistically significant. The spin is provided by other groups. No, when they say that there's an increase or decline, even if we say there's no increase or decline, it's a marginal thing. The spin is something that comes from either a partisan group who tends to be favored by the current survey result, or even by a media practitioner. So that's one thing that we would really ask media to check on. And many of the media entities, the major dailies, do get to us and ask us about, ano ba ito? Significant ba? And I do like that.
Minsan 2 percentage points lang yung tinaas tapos surge.
Yeah, and then what we've done recently, because we find it a little bit difficult to always respond, we put the margins of error on our website already. Nandun na, pati yung breakdown.
Actually, I don't trust a survey na walang margin of error.
Nandun na lahat yung tables sa website na namin. Kasi nga, mine and Dr. Tabunda's numbers are in our media releases. But if 7 people contact me within the day and I have 2 classes to attend to, I cannot get back to them immediately. So I just send them the link to the website. Dito makikita yan.
Sir, may question si Ariel. Any of you gentlemen can answer. Sabi niya, yung mga validators daw or ground personnel, kailangan daw po ba confidential ang names nila, or there's a sense of anonymity for them?
They have IDs, you mean? May ID mga yan. Ang mini-maintain mo anonymity nung respondent.
Yes.
I do not know who the interviewees are. I know who the interviewers are. We know who they are. But the respondent, ang nakakaalam lang na identity nun, yung nag-interview sa kanya.
Joyce, follow-up
Not the
question.
other way around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Yung follow-up question ko lang, sir, I understand na siyempre pag nasa sila, they don't have to misrepresent themselves, di ba? Kailangan may identify themselves, etc. kung saan galing survey firm. Kunyari ito ngayon, would it be possible na kung ito ginagawa nating panel discussion ngayon, merong isa sana or dalawa na personnel or interviewers ng survey na andito para maitanong kung paano nila kinakonduct or hindi sila talaga pwedeng ma-interview ng media?
Pwede naman, kaso we should maintain the anonymity also if we pixelize.
Okay.
Kasi
we can do that, Sir Ronnie, we can do yung nasa dark room and then the voice will be modulated.
Okay.
But, on occasion, for example, I myself have observed some surveys. The last survey I observed was in Zamboanga City. That was about 3 years ago, before the pandemic. I myself did the interview.
Okay.
So of course, Zamboanga City, di mo siguro makakala doon. So I did the interview. And then we took pictures and I've asked some of our field personnel to take pictures. But more often than not, we don't do that because it's also an intrusion into, we have to get their consent. So, yun lang, sa akin is that as President of PULSE, my primary role is secure the integrity of our surveys. I can assure you that our surveys, we follow all the necessary consistency checks. We avoid any form of infiltration. That's why no one knows when we conduct the surveys.
Yeah. Kaya naitanong ko yun, kasi for an ordinary citizen, kasi syempre, yung mga neighbors ko minsan tatanong, alam nila mayroong programa ito ngayon, tinatanong nila, so sino ba talaga yung mga nag-i-interview na yan? Di ba yung mga ganun? Saan ba yan? Sino ba sila? Ano klaseng experts yan sila na nasa ground na nag-i-interview? Yung mga ganun, kaya tinanong ko din yun. So, I'm
So
sure.
Ariel, do they come to your house bringing gifts? Diba? Meron bang pansit canton na kapalit para sagutan ko yung survey mo?
Di ba yung mga ganong...
JP Soriano pala, Ariel, may tanong.
Sure.
Quick follow-up to your question. Paano nyo binivet yung sarili ninyong field team? Ano ang requirement? Are they trained? How do you... Kailangan ba gwapo? Ano ba? Paano?
Actually po,
And
ma'am,
do you record these surveys?
Since you asked that question in that way, we actually avoid yung there's a practice, matagal na to, long-standing practice. Actually, tinuro nga rin po ito sa School of Statistics sa UP. Hindi pwedeng masyadong gwapo, hindi pwedeng masyadong maganda. Because that would have an effect on how people respond to the interviewer. As numerous studies have shown na pag mas gwapo, pag mas maganda, iba ang pakikitungo ng mga tao. And that is a kind of noise that interferes with surveys.
Yeah, karamihan babae kasi of course meron ka ring nature na gano'n, no? Hindi gano'n ka-intimidating.
Threatening.
Yes,
Threatening.
Yes.
Although kailangan magpapakilala sila, pag naggagawa kami ng pre-election survey, walang magsusuot ng kulay ng sinumang kandidato lokal o nasyonal. Ang problema dyan, kulay puti na lang naiwanan. Pero sa ibang lugar, yung puti, kulay rin ng kandidato.
Yung kay Grace po, sir, di ba?
So ang hirap, no? But at least white is white. It's not you don't mix it up with any other color. So that's the way to vet it. And then we normally have really the team that conducts our survey would essentially be the same team. The bigger value there would be in terms of the field coordinators and supervisors who really do the spot checking also. Sila yung parang...
Comment lang si JP, sir. Given your statement kanina, ikaw daw, si Sir Guido David and si David, hindi kayo pwedeng mag-conduct ng survey.
Salamat po.
Dahil lalaki kami.
O baka masyado na kayong gwapo. Noise.
Nakaka-intimidate po, ma'am.
Noise na raw kayo. Sir, may tanong dito. Maybe si Dr. Guido David would like to take this. Sa mga Facebook campaign ads daw, declare kung sino ang campaign ads in general, you declare sinong nagponto. Diba? Or at least you say, friends of ganito, saan nakatira, may address. Hindi raw ba pwedeng i-disclose kung sino ang nagpa-commission ng political surveys?
Well, most of our surveys are non-commissioned anyway. And they're also, I mean, even if they commission, especially if they commission, we're bound by a non-disclosure agreement. So we because of that contract, we don't declare. Yung sa Facebook kasi, it's usually publicly accessible. These let's say ads or commercials. So I think they have to declare that.
My question po dito, sino po ang pumipili ng areas to be surveyed?
Yeah.
Saka, Sir Ronnie, parang na rin alala ko lang in a previous interview, you said na yung AB, class AB, most of the time excluded na sa respondents kasi nga mahirap pumasok sa gated communities, mahirap sila ma-access. Across all survey firms po ba yun? Ganun siya?
No, not really excluded, Joyce. Nangyayari lang, we select the respondents randomly, right? So, ang unang ginagawa mo dyan, we determine the sample size. Then we divide that sample size to subnational areas. Normally, we have NCR, Balas, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. We can do that proportional to the population size. Then we decide how many barangays will be selected in each area. You select cities and municipalities, you select the barangay, you select the household, then you select the respondent within the household. After you interview, that's the only time you classify them in terms of socioeconomic class. Nagkataon lang na doon sa noong February and March, wala kaming na randomly select na nasa class AB. But if you look at our data historically, there were surveys that we had class AB. Like December, we had about, I think, 10 or 11 out of 2,400. Humihirap na rin makakuha ng class AB kasi if you look at NCR alone, where we cover all cities, ilan na ang high-rise units dyan na may secure. So those are the things that I think we need to really look into. But again, class AB, even if we did not get them, in all our surveys will just be a small class. Correct. It's about 1 to 4%. Using the socioeconomic classification that market research groups use. Because the other thing that I've seen recently is that they're using a different socioeconomic classification, which was based in a study commissioned by the World Bank with the Philippine Statistics Agency. Magkaiba. You do not compare two different socioeconomic classes from the one that we use and the one that is found in that study. Doon pa isang complication. Kasi doon yung class C ang laki-laki. Sa amin ang class C is about 9-10% lang.
Ang malaki talaga, sir, sa inyo yung D&E, tama po ba?
D&E constitute about 9 out of 10.
Talagang mataas. Si Ariel, sir, may question ulit.
Ito, medyo tricky, pero just I'm going to ask this. Paano po kayo magre-react o magre-respond to a perception pag na-identify ang isang survey firm sa isang kandidato?
Well, I don't know how to react anymore because in the past, we were called Dilawans and then we were called DDS and now we're called BBM. So, I don't know. I know what my politics is. I do not get my politics mixed up with my teaching or with my research. But we definitely, I don't know, that's the perception of some people. It's equally offensive. It's really flawed. It's baseless, but as I'm an opinion taker, I will just respect. I do not understand. I mean, I will just accept, but I do not understand where these people are coming from.
I am indifferent. They are free to they're entitled to their own opinion, but I largely do not care about what most people think about me. I only care about the opinions of a few people, and as long as I do my work properly, that's it.
Sir David, Guido?
Yeah, well, I've become desensitized to it. So, I mean, and anyway, as as Dr. Holmes mentioned, it's usually ano naman parang you get parang hindi naman nagiging parang bandwagon, but you get affiliated with whoever's leading in your survey. And that's I mean, parang that seems like it's par for the course. Parang you won't be accused of being biased towards someone who's not leading in the survey. So I think because of that, you know that there's no substance in these accusations, unless of course they have proof. But if there's no proof, then there's nothing to it.
Sorry, may tanong dito si Mark kung hindi raw so for the non-commissioned surveys, yung iba raw po ba nun ay minsan government funded or talagang pag government funded, it's still considered a commissioned survey, right? Because they're funding it. Pag non-commissioned, talagang sa inyo po yun.
Ang alam ko lang, ang gobyerno hindi pwede magpondo ng political surveys.
Okay, that much we don't.
We've done some work in the past with some government agencies, with international organizations, but they're not political. They're not electoral, They're not electoral. They assess programs, so it's not electoral.
Okay, wala na tayong maraming tanong mula sa ating chat group. Actually, I wanted to ask kung magbabago pa ba yung survey results for the presidential at this point.
Dr. Ronnie Holmes, you can go ahead and start.
Ayan, tinuro ka niya, sir. Ikaw daw ang...
Akala ko according to age, David youngest muna. So ako ba?
Teka, ako ba ang youngest? So si Dr. Guido.
No, I think there is a possibility of change, and you cannot rule out change because there are certain events that transpire that we cannot in any way predict that may eventually change people's voting decision. It's hard to predict. It's hard to preclude that possibility. We've had survey results in the past, the exit poll in 2010, that point out that about 23% even make a decision the day before or the day of election. Of course, it's a different context. I don't know whether that would be the same this time around. But since certain events may transpire from now until May 9, we don't know whether those are events that will shift or reinforce the voting preferences at this point.
Gentlemen, Dr. Guido, Dr. David?
Yeah, well, I've already been misquoted as saying na impossible na daw mag-change yung results, which I didn't say actually. I'm just saying that if we base strictly on what the survey is showing, it looks like it's an overwhelming lead or a very significant lead. But, reality can sometimes be, can sometimes bring surprises. So ang sinasabi lang namin lagi, just go out and vote who your candidate is based on platform and your personal beliefs, and and then we'll see what happens on May 9. Again, these studies we do, academic studies, are mainly used to estimate lang what the preferences are. It's not trying to we're not really trying to make predictions. It's just a snapshot, and it is what it is. So, so the numbers may look daunting to some, pero like I said, sometimes it's difficult to predict the future. So there might be some events that may transpire. Sabi nga ni Dean Tony na which I'm not even aware of. I'm just a data analyst. So these things may definitely affect what would happen on May 9th.
Yeah. Plus the fact that I just wanted to add, David, before you answer, no. Plus the fact that you have soft voters, di ba? That can still go one way or the other.
I would like to disabuse people of the notion that statisticians are soothsayers or they're fortune tellers. When you consider statistical prediction, even the most advanced methods of prediction are subject to criticism for the very simple reason that those predictions are based on a very specific set of assumptions. And the moment that those assumptions are tweaked in any what way, then those predictions will no longer hold. Now, I think that apart from surveys, what is important is to consider the culture, the zeitgeist, so to speak. And I think that if you're asking what could change within the next 2.5 weeks, that's the crucial, that's the heart of the problematique, so to speak. If you consider the cultural zeitgeist, where is it at this point? That's the culture, that is where these battles are ultimately fought. And if you consider where the culture is at right now, and that doesn't change quickly, definitely not change within the span of 2 weeks, then you have this sort of environment where you can more or less make assessments about the future. Note, I'm being precise with my words. I'm not saying predictions. So while there are still things that are up in the air, I would advise anyone who is trying to figure out what will happen on May 9th and onwards to consider the cultural zeitgeist. What are the factors that come into play? What are the factors that have influenced the minds of people? Because these are things that do not change overnight, as much as some pundits might want to claim otherwise. People are set, people have preferences, people have personalities, and you don't just come up to them and alter their entire opinions. So these are things that you have to consider. And of course, these go beyond the ken of statistics. Now, if you want me to talk about statistics, I've taken the numbers of Pulse, I've taken the numbers of Okta, I've taken our numbers, I've taken the numbers of Lilo. And if you want to be technical about it, I ran 10,000 models under a Monte Carlo simulation setup. And they all point to the same thing. And if you're talking about soft voters, I am also playing around with the Markov chain simulation, looking at how the voters, or rather the supporters of different candidates, shake out with reference to their firmness, the firmness of their vote. And the outcome with our latest data is unchanged. There is a sense of stability across different time periods. So that is why, so just tying it all in a circle, that is why I would like to point out the importance of considering socio-cultural factors. Where is the culture at right now?
Yeah, tama. Kung meron mang takeaway doon, patay na po si Nostradamus, ano? So yung mga kaharap natin, hindi nila kaya talagang predict until the last survey, which will happen on May 9.
Ma'am, interestingly enough, Nostradamus is the perfect example of what is called the Forer effect. If you consider the writings of Nostradamus, most of them are vague and ambiguous enough to be interpreted in any variety of ways. Yeah. Pag tignan mo naman yung mga numero namin, if you look at the numbers of Publicus, of Pulse Asia, of Okta, they're very precise. They're numbers, they're ranges. Hindi naman yung katulad yung kay Nostradamus that it can be applied to any number of events or scenarios.
Sir, sorry, may pahabol lang po dito. Have you considered studying the impact of your surveys and how the release of such information influences the voting populace and the politicians' behavior as well? And whether that is something you need to or even have already considered in terms of timing your surveys?
I need to go. I'll just be quick. I've answered that already earlier. The effect of surveys in terms of voting behavior, there's a mixed bag of studies here. But basically, whatever effect is little. As to politicians' behavior, I think, some politicians are guided by surveys. Some, not all. Some dismiss it when it doesn't favor them. Bye-bye. Sorry, I need to go.
Thank you, Sir Ronnie, for joining us. Actually, we're a bit wrapping up now.
Closing,
wala na rin tayong
questions.
Thank you, Sir Ronnie. Super. So wala na tayong questions from our participants. We'd like to thank all of our speakers, Sir Ronnie, Sir Guido, and Sir David. And of course, si Dean Tony who had to leave a little earlier kanina. Maraming salamat po, Sir Guido and Dr. David. You'd have closing remarks before I turn over to
I think
Ariel?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I think we're good. But yun nga. I think this has been a wonderful forum for us to learn and learn about the surveys and ask people who are involved in surveys, because there's a lot of misinformation right now being spread about survey companies or about the surveys themselves. So I hope it has cleared up some notions or misconceptions. Pero we're always transparent. So if you have any additional questions, you just let us know. Ako naman, I can easily be reached. I'm sure some people here have my number. So and thank you again for having us. And it was welcome talk with some of the acclaimed experts in the industry. See Dr. David Yap and Dr. Ronnie Holmes, and of course Dean Tony Lavinia, who's also a well-regarded attorney. Ayan. Thank you.
Ayun. So maraming salamat, especially to our participants. We have a survey form. Ayan, nag-survey kami. Sa ating chat group, sa ating
Scientific
chat box,
ba yan?
rather.
Na-joke lang.
Hindi.
Evaluation form lang, sir.
Evaluation. Okay.
Evaluation form.
Good.
Paki-fill up naman po sa ating mga participants so we'd know how to improve pa po what we're doing right now, and to also help our funder, of course, HSF, to assess kung tayo ba ay effective at kung paano pa pwedeng pagandahin ang ating mga events with them. And siguro, bago ko i-turn over kay Ariel, isang maliit na panawagan lang sa mga kasamahan natin sa media na kapag tayo po ay nagsusulat tungkol sa survey, iwasan po natin yung mga loaded na terms o yung mga tipong nag-surge kahit 2 points lang or bumulusok kahit 1 point lang pala yung binaba niya. Alamin ang margin of error, lalo na kung kung magkakadikit yung percentage ng voters' preference, dahil baka statistically tied naman pala at hindi naman pala runaway winner yung isa. At alamin ang context. So sometimes they detail naman kung ano yung context during the time that the survey was conducted. Just as we ask our survey firms to be, to be mindful that the framing is important, the framing of our stories is also equally important para maintindihan po ng mga kababayan natin at hindi sila ma-mislead or ma-misinform sa resulta ng mga surveys. And on that note, very formal note, this is Joyce Pañara, Seminar Director of the Philippine Press Institute. I turn you over to our Executive Director, Ariel Sibilino.
Thanks very much, Joyce. Thanks our panelists. Wonderful discussion. Sana meron pa tayo, pero mukhang wala na, papalapit yung election. Pero meron pa tayo may ibang discussion and other programs. But really, sana niliwanagan tayo sa mga madami nating tanong. And for our other matters percolating in our minds, sabi nga ni Sir Guido kanina, andyan lang naman sila, pwede nating pagtanungan. At yun po, tapos na po ang ating diskusyon ngayon at patuloy po tayong maging mapanuri at pag-aralan pa rin yung mga surveys na nakikita natin. At para po sa publiko na siniserve natin, whether it's journalists or content providers. So maraming salamat, HSF, and please do not forget to answer the evaluation forms so that we can do better next time. Please like the pages of PPI and Seidel Foundation. See you next time, and actually see you in our podcast and other activities coming up this month. Maraming salamat po sa inyo. See you next time. Bye-bye. Keep safe.